Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with our opening.
No, I'm going to come over here.
Just because I'm like to swing it directly to you guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to.
My name is Rick Crump. I'm the Executive Director of an organization called Kinetic Faith. We operate across the state, helping, we're involved in various issues across the state with legislation, school boards, etc. Team asked me to, the Cocalico team asked me to moderate tonight's debate. Just go through some quick talking points here. Tonight's debate will be live streamed and recorded, so just for everybody knows they're going to be on camera. All candidates were invited. All existing candidates for the school board and write-ins and anybody else who won the primary. They were all invited tonight. These were the four that decided to show, so I would say please give them a hand. Thank you for showing up. We've got a lot of questions to get through. The questions that were chosen were developed by myself based on feedback from the community, as well as some things that we've heard have been discussed in school board meetings. So these are designed to be insightful, to give you the ability to make an informed decision. Okay, so if you don't like the questions, blame me. I'm the guy who designed them. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question unless stated otherwise. There's a couple of examples where we may give them more or less. I know emotions right now in Cocalico, as well as many districts across the state, are very high, and we want to go quickly through these questions. So please keep your crowd response to a minimum. I'm not going to tell you you can't clap or move. Look, this is America, okay? But I would ask you to keep it, quick, and so we can move on. Time permitting, and honestly, only when necessary. And again, another reason is that time permitting, we're going to try and get in questions from the audience. So that's another reason why we want to quickly move through this tonight. So if there's really something pressing, we're going to form a line here, and you guys can get the microphone yourself. And then, for the sake of order and respect for all parties, individual outbursts cannot be permitted, and your removal is at my sole discretion as moderator. Okay? There will be a box passed around for donations tonight for the event at the fire hall. All donations will go directly and only to the fire hall tonight. And as a reminder, tomorrow is the last day to register to vote. I hope you're all registered, and if you aren't, please get registered by tomorrow, because we're here tonight. We want to take action on. And with that, I want to invite Lin Sensenig from the Cocalico GOP committee to make an opening statement.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out and for your interest. I really appreciate it. I am the Cocalico Area Republican Committee chairperson. And this kind of grassroots activism is not a bad thing. Okay, I like to see people getting engaged in our political process and showing interest. I appreciate the civility that Cocalico has shown to this point, and I just hope and pray that that continues. We may have some differences of opinion, but it's nothing that we can't work out. So I just encourage everybody to stay involved. If you would like to get more involved, reach out to me, get me your resumes. Whether you're interested in school board or something with your township or borough or wherever you live, get involved, stay involved. Good community participation is required for good jobs. If we're going to self-govern, people got to do it. So thank you for coming, and again, keep paying attention, keep staying engaged, and thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, question for the sound man. Are we going to have the candidates use this hand microphone? Where do you go? This one, okay, I think what we'll just do is we'll just do a serpentine back and forth. Okay, as we just each side. This first question. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for let's open up a prayer. Father, thank you for this evening, and thank you for those who have shown up as citizens, and thank you for the candidates that have given their time here. This matters. What happens at the school board matters. What happens to our children's education matters to you. It's not just political, Lord. It is something that matters deeply to you in what our children are taught, what they're not taught, and the behaviors that they develop over time. So we ask tonight that you give us clarity of thought and help us to be articulate, to honor you in everything we say and do. And I pray that we would walk out of here with the information we need to make the right decision. In your son's name, amen. Okay, what I'm going to ask is, starting with Dan, the first question, we're going to do 3 minutes. We're going to combine a personal introduction, just to the candidate's going to introduce themselves, and they're going to tell us what their qualifications are to be on the school board.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Burton. As far as qualifications to be on the school board, I'm a loving father, a conservative. I truly believe that our school board is our last bastion of freedom for our community. We have magistrates as elected officials, and we the people need those magistrates to represent us. And this is the lowest form of government that is trying to be taken from us. And so through that and through what I've seen through the last year, 2 years, I am being called to be the warrior I was created to be. And so to that mindset, I feel that I am a person that is being called by the Lord to step up and represent our community and to really fight for our children. And to that end, that's why I decided to do this. As far as qualifications to be on the school board, I think one of the biggest qualifications is to be obviously in the school district, to be a loving parent, to be somebody that wants to step and intercede on behalf of our children, and to look out for their health and safety and keep the power to the parents. And so those are my strongest foundational beliefs. And I think that's all that we really need as a qualification to be on school board, is to be truthful, honest, and have the best interests of our children in mind when it comes to their education, comes to curriculum, and everything that we do there. So that would be why I would think there's my qualifications. So I'll pass it off to Rachel.
Hi, thank you guys for coming. My name is Rachel Davis. I live in the Cocalico School District. I have 3 children in the district. 2 of them are elementary age, 1 is in the high school. I have had children in the district since 2013. I am also a certified pre-K through 12 educator, licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. And over the past 2 years in the education system, what I witnessed in the education sector was very, very alarming to me. The policies that I saw enacted, the curriculum changes that I saw going on, harmful practices in the classroom, political ideology, radical leftism being pushed by teachers in the classroom, those set off my alarm bells. Those are what caused me to actually quit my job as a public educator and refocus my passions back into my children's education and to be paying attention closely to what is going on in my district, because I was so overly concerned with what was going on in the district for whom I worked that I realized I didn't want to be a part of what was going on. I didn't want to forward these policies and these changes that I saw that were harmful and almost abusive in ideology of what was going on. And so that is what I did. I quit my job and I am now back into the social services field, working from home. And my qualifications to be on the school board, first and foremost, are a parent of children in the district and a passionate person who wants to be a voice of those parents that are out there for our children and to stand against any of these harmful practices that may be coming into or may have already slipped into our district in many ways. Those are my qualifications. I actually think I got these questions in a different order. I think it was just first introducing myself and then explaining why I wanted to run for school board. So that is why I wanted to run for school board. And then I think we're going to talk about next what the minimum qualifications should be.
Yeah, I've actually combined the first 2.
Okay. So I don't know if my time is up or not.
30 seconds.
Okay, so I have been working with children since 2004. I was a nanny for a child with special needs from 2004 to 2008. During my university studies, I had hundreds of hours of observations in Lancaster County classrooms. I student taught at Penn Manor High School in 2013. I was an STS substitute from 2017 to 2019, which included a long-term subbing position at Cocalico High School. From 2019 to 2021, I worked in Lancaster City as a Spanish school teacher.
So my name is Lin Sensenig. I actually saw Rachel's notes. She did a lot better job preparing than I did. Let's put that out there. I'm married to Patty, 34 years. Yeah, coming up on 34 years. About 3 weeks. And 3 daughters. So our first 2 have been through Cocalico and had good experiences. Our third, is that better? Our third daughter's in 11th grade, so I'd say that's probably my biggest qualification is that I want to be on the school board. This is my second term, and I would probably describe myself as the anti-candidate. So up until about, I would say a few days ago, I was convinced I was not going to go for the second term, just because frankly I was tired. And I had someone pray for me this week, and they prayed specifically that I wouldn't quit because I was weary and frustrated. And that's exactly why I was going to quit, because I was very frustrated. So I decided at that point I was convicted. Not to quit. So Patty raised her eyebrows a little bit at me when I said that. But so I put it this way: I'm more than happy to serve if I'm elected. If I'm not elected, I'm fine with that too. So, that's really, I would say, quite simply, I believe strongly in parental rights, and that would probably be the basis for what I would focus on. And I do believe. There's a lot of good people within the school district, and there's a lot of good people on the board who need to come together and coalesce and work towards giving our parents back their rights. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm Brett Buckwalter. I have a few weeks on Patty and Lynn. I've been married 34 years to my wife, Robin. We have 3 students who have all graduated from Cocalico. My youngest is 19. She was actually the senior class president in 2020. My son Brian, graduated in 2015. And my oldest child is 28. He graduated with my son Brian. Colin is a special needs child. You might have seen him around the community for county soccer games or basketball games. He's a young man in a wheelchair. He is the reason that I asked to be on the school board. This is the third time that I'm running. This is the third time that I'm up for election in 4 years. I was appointed. The election 4 years ago. There was somebody who was elected. They did not live in the district and could not serve. I was asked to step in and fill that role for 1 year. I ran. Then I ran again 2 years ago, and now I'm running again this year. So I'm tired of running for election. And the worst part of this is, and Lynn doesn't know this yet, is there's school board training we all have to go through every time we're elected, and I am simply tired of that. I wanted to be on the school board because I come from a family of service. My mother and grandmother served in their church. My father was a supervisor and zoning board officer. My brother's a zoning board officer and supervisor. My grandfather was a tax collector. Coming up in my house, we were taught it was a duty and a privilege to serve our community. So when I knew I had the time and the energy, I decided to run for school board. And I'm really happy I do it. I'm really happy I serve 9 people that I like very much. I'm always encouraged to go into a room and have conversation that's insightful with the people who I serve with on this board. And I hear it from other people who serve in school boards that that's not often the room they walk into. So I've learned a lot from the people, and I look forward to being elected again in a few weeks. Qualifications, the only qualification I think you need is to be a parent and be interested in serving your school district. That's really why we're all here. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. For the sake of time, we're going to combine the next 2 questions. For the audience's benefit, the next 2 questions are, what, if any, officially recognized credentials do you think should be a minimum standard for qualifying for the school board, and why? These would include things like degrees, certifications, areas of expertise. And then also, what, if any, unofficially recognized credentials do you think should be a minimum standard for qualifying for the board, and why? Such as being a parent, having children in the district, owning a home, being registered to vote, etc. So I'm gonna combine the 2. We're moving along pretty well here. I'm gonna ask the candidates to answer both in one answer. What official and unofficial credentials do you think are minimum standards? And again, we'll give 3 minutes unless we feel like we need further, I think 3 minutes should be enough.
I think that you need to, for school board, you obviously need to live in the school district of your school. You need to live in the school district. That's the only qualification I think you really need that's official, and I think that's the way it should be. We should not put any litmus test on anybody who runs for office. Unofficially, I think you need time, energy, and the ability to you need time and energy and the ability to learn and listen, and I think that's the unofficial one. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My personal experience is that I dropped out of high school, so I certainly advise my kids not to follow that path, but that's the path that I chose. And so I would agree that I think the most important qualification is having kids in the district. I think that's really important, and it certainly gives you a different perspective. You know, I hear about it through a different set of eyes than just maybe through the administration or whatever. So I think that's important. And I would agree with Brett, certainly the ability to listen empathetically and to have compassion and certainly to operate with a bit of grace is important. The school board, I learned a lot in my 4 years so far. I was always in business and I was used to things moving quickly and being able to kind of, I would say, legislate quickly. It's not quite that way in the school board, so there's certainly getting used to those pieces has been challenging for me, and to some degree it's a little frustrating, but just certainly a fact of life in a lot of ways.
I agree with the two gentlemen that just spoke as far as requirements, official requirements. I think if we were to require a certain level of education, be it a degree or something of that manner, I think we would disqualify many capable individuals. There are many successful people out there who did not go to college, own large corporations or small businesses, entrepreneurs, things of that nature, very creative, very intelligent, competent people, and so I do not think that there needs to be a certain level of education that one needs to obtain in order to sit on the board. I do think, unofficially, as the two previous gentlemen stated, that you should be a parent, a grandparent, a guardian, aunt, uncle, foster parent of children in the district at the time that you're running for the school board. Because if you have a personal interest invested, you're going to watch for a positive outcome and be invested in that positive outcome. It's just like if you're invested in the stock market, you buy a lottery ticket, you invest into anything, you're going to be watching and seeing how that outcome turns out, right? So you have to have skin in the game. I think that would be the minimum requirement unofficially. Officially, I don't think there needs to be any other type of requirement.
I too said that, again, in the beginning, when I first gave my first answer, I think your main qualification would be you need to be a parent of someone in the school board or somebody in the school district. At some point, a grandparent, a parent, a guardian, as Rachel had said, level of education doesn't matter. I think level of respect and care for where the direction of the school district goes is the main requirement. As far as unanswered or unrecognized unofficial credentials, I think you do need to have an aptitude to be able to listen to those around you. I often say to my kids, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen more to those around you so that you can have that humility and grace when you have to step up into a position of leadership. You know the people that you're representing and the people that you're listening to, and you're standing up for when you're on the school board or when you're in that position of a magisterial position that you're representing those people in the school district. So unofficially, I do believe that you need to listen, you need to be a leader of some sort, you need to care, and you need to have skin in the game, like Rachel said. So again, education, as Lynn stated, you don't need to have a college graduate degree to be a rocket scientist here on the school board. You need to have kids, you need to care where the direction of the school district is going. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll start again with you, Dan. Work our way back to the way. Okay, so the The next category for questions is the category we call worldview. It's a very broad question to start us off with. Please explain your worldview as it relates to children's education.
Our children are a bastion of hope for the world. So there's my 10,000 foot view of where our kids are. They're our most precious thing in this entire world. You've often heard me say at the school board meetings that I'm a warrior and that I hate evil. Well, right now we see evil is attacking our children, whether it be through curriculums, whether it be through critical race theory, wearing masks, whether you agree with that or not, taking that control away from parents. It's obviously an attack on our children. So my worldview of what the education of our children should be, it's the parents' decision on where that education should be, first off, but also understanding that our children are our most precious asset. And so as I look at our worldview and in children's education, I think we need to get back to basics. I truly believe that we are hindering the future of our children by teaching a test, which we find ourselves doing right now. By teaching, you all see it, the teachers now are not free to teach. They now have to teach a curriculum that's laid out before them. So they're teaching a test all the way up through May. And so if you actually talk to a teacher, the teachers are, what am I even doing here anymore? So we're losing good teachers that would foster questions from students.
30 seconds.
And we're taking away that opportunity for those kids to actually learn something meaningful as opposed to what's just on a test. So my worldview of education, we need to put it back in the hands of the parents, we need to put it back in the hands of the school board, and we need to start really looking at what our curriculum is. And you all see that through CRT and everything else. So that's my worldview, my 10,000 foot view of that.
And apologies, I did not clarify for this, but it is 2 minutes per response.
Okay. So my worldview as it regards to education, children belong to the parents. Not the school board, not the state, not Pennsylvania Department of Education, and not the federal government. Okay? So we send our children to school to be educated through academics. So we want our children to learn to read, to write, to read a text and be able to analyze it and answer questions and recall what they read, to be able to do mathematics. We do not send our children to school to be taught their morals, what is wrong and what is right, social emotional learning, social and emotional intelligence, sexuality, things of that nature. That is the parents' job. The parents are the first and primary educator. The school is to teach academics, period. Any state, federal, or local mandate that comes down that overrides parental authority must be met with non-compliance, and board members are there as representatives of the parents whom elected them.
Yeah, so I think it's, in my opinion, it's most important that we educate and we don't. Is that better?
Yeah, that's right. I think maybe we do need the batteries.
Check.
These are double A's.
Sorry, I thought
Yeah, go ahead, please. My apologies for getting some more batteries.
Yeah, so I believe it's our responsibility as a public school to educate and not indoctrinate. So I truly value teachers who have that ability to teach facts and let kids make their own decisions. I know that realize that everyone has their own lens. They see the world, they see their own worldview through. And I understand that and appreciate that, but I believe we can and should have responsibility to teach without indoctrinating. I think that as far as mandates are concerned, I echo Rachel's opinion. I believe that we have much more power as a local district than what we believe we do. And there's been a lot of threats and intimidation that have come down that I believe are just simply that. They're threats and intimidation. I think it's time to take that power back into our own hands and to start exercising. We will be faced very, very shortly with the vaccine mandate. that's coming down the pike. So we gotta decide now where we're at, what we're gonna do about it, and what's our response gonna be. If I could just say one more quick comment, and I'll be quiet, and that is that I think we also have to be aware that the product of many college and universities that are coming, the kids that are coming out there today, is there's a lot of indoctrination going on there. So I think it's important for us to realize that, not to necessarily be scared of it, to train our kids well and get them through that gauntlet, but bring them back to the same values that they went in with.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. So, I'm so glad that Dan went first on this question. I think education is just not in the school. It has to be in the home and with the exposure you give to your children. You have to be able to encourage and talk to them. You want to make sure that when they come home from school, you can have an open and honest conversation about what they've heard in the classroom that day. That's my worldview. It's just not the home. It's just not the home. It's not the school. It's what they see. It's what they read. It's what's on their phone. I always have tried to have honest conversations with my children. I've got one in college right now who she and I can have some very interesting conversations, and I've just had a week doing that. So education is, my worldview on education is that it's just not the school. It's got to be the parent. They've got to take some control over it too.
Okay, I apologize for the technical issues, folks. All right, the next question is, what place do your personal religious beliefs have or not have in guiding your decisions as a school board member? And at what point, if any, should there be restrictions on personal religious beliefs in guiding the decisions of any school board member? 2 minutes.
As a school board member, I do not think that your religious beliefs should be in the room. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't inform you as a person. But we ask our teachers we ask our teachers at Cocalico. We strive for them not to bring it into the classroom. We try for them to be neutral. I think as a school board member, we also need to demonstrate that we need to make decisions as neutrally as we possibly can. That doesn't mean that my own personal views don't come into that meeting at times. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. It's a great question. I would say this, personally, I want to reflect Christ. That's simply my goal. I want to reflect Christ, so I want to see that come through loud and clear. So that's probably going to show up in a board meeting setting. I would guess that it probably would. But I would also like to say that I feel strongly that we need to be tolerant of other people's views and opinions. So I'm certainly can work. I can socialize with. I can have good conversation with people of different faiths. I have no issue with that at all, and certainly wouldn't come at it from a condescending or a judgmental standpoint. But personally, I want to reflect Christ.
Amen, Lynn. So everything that I do, every decision that I make, every relationship that I have comes through the lens of my governing authority, which would be God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. I live my life through that lens, and I do so unapologetically. So even sitting on a board, my decisions would be informed through my faith. And I think that that is a good thing, because that means, for me, that I would value integrity, honesty, truth, and wisdom. And I think that I couldn't do it without those things. Are we getting to the second part of that question next?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will leave that then for the next question.
No, it's 2 parts.
Okay.
What place does it have, and at what point should there be any restrictions on your personal beliefs?
Okay, so the restriction for me would come into place where my personal convictions would not ever and should not ever be enforced on anyone else. I believe in freedom of religion and faith for all, and so my freedom protects yours and your freedom protects mine.
I too am a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is my shepherd. Some of you have seen that I said I'm a warrior. I believe I'm a sheepdog. If you saw what I'm talking about there, I believe we're all part of the same flock. Whether we believe in Christ or not, I will always stand here with my arms open wide, ready to listen. As Lynn said, we need to have differing opinions. And if you have a differing opinion than mine, sorry, this mic is If you have a different opinion, Mike, yeah, I don't mean to be sick. Yeah, sorry. Differing opinions make the world turn. Okay? So if we all had the same opinion in this room, there's only one of us needed in this room. Okay? So whether you embrace Christ or whether you don't, that is okay. But my arms will always be open to be able to talk to you about that. Okay? So that is my litmus test. I believe the Bible is a handbook and a great guide for all of us. There's some great rules in it. It's a bestseller. It's a bestseller for a reason. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Whether we believe that path or not, that is my guidebook and where I go with it. Okay? Do I push that on other people? No. Do I want them to come to my beliefs? Absolutely. And I will listen to you and I will be humble and graceful in that. So that is my guide for the decisions that I make. At what point should there be restrictions on personal religious beliefs? I don't think there should ever be a restriction on somebody's personal beliefs.
No, in guiding your decisions as a school board member.
Oh, well, I don't think there'd be restrictions on personal religious beliefs, but I don't think there should be restrictions on what your guide may be. I mean, that throws a wrench into it. Okay, thank you, 10 seconds. I think freedom is freedom. You should have the choice. You should, ultimately, the greatest gift we were given is the freedom to choose. So I don't think there should be a decision between whether you can have personal religious beliefs guide you or not guide you.
And there is one discrepancy from your sheet, because I recognize from the email I sent you, there's one question that's on the email that wasn't on the sheet for tonight, but it was sent out to you last night, and that is another part of the worldview. In what way would your views on the Constitution influence your decision as a school board member? And as a following question, who should have the greatest level of jurisdiction in children's education? The local, county, state, or federal level? So what are your views? How would your views in the Constitution influence your decision as a school board member? And at what level of jurisdiction? Who should have the greatest level of jurisdiction in your children's education? Local, county, state, or federal?
First off, I believe the Constitution was written based off of biblical values. That first value that I was talking about in my last answer was the freedom of choice. Now, as man, I believe that we took that freedom of choice. It's the greatest freedom the Lord gave us, and threw it away when we picked that apple that looked delicious off that tree, right? But we still had that freedom of choice, and that's where our Constitution was built off of. We're the first country in the history of man to absolutely give free choice to its citizens. And that's how that was written. That's how the Constitution was written, off of those biblical principles. Okay, when Jethro came to Moses and said, these are how it's good, we're going to do by leaders of judges of tens, of 20s, of 50s, hundreds, and thousands. That's where we wrote that Constitution off of. That's why it starts with we, the people. So if we're talking about Constitution decisions and how we're going to make those decisions, it needs to be based off of the Constitution, which is biblical. So they go hand in hand. That is my opinion on that. When we're talking about who should be in charge the most, I don't think, it's funny because I run for office to go into a government that I think should be almost eliminated. Okay? It should be we the people. So when we talk about who should have more power, there's a federal government or is it the locals? I think it should be local. Actually, it should be the parents and we the people, then our local magistrates. What you're looking at up here is your local magistrates. It should be you, then the representatives, then on up from there. Okay? So when you ask me who should have jurisdictional powers, it should be everyone sitting out here with the questions that you ask of us and the representation that we are supposed to do from up here. And that's the way it should be and should have, and always was set up to be, but somewhere along the line that has changed. And so it is our job to make sure we change that back. And slowly go the other way, we got to get back this direction. The pendulum needs to swing back. So absolutely local.
Yes, so the state and federal constitutions are supreme when it comes to any laws, not just educational and that which governs our schools. The government was created for the people, not to tell the people what to do, okay? So all power is inherent in the people, not just a little bit, not just some, but all, okay? And the Constitution lays out our inalienable rights that we are born with from God. They don't give us our rights. They just state on pen and paper that we have those rights, and they cannot be taken away from us, okay? So it's not what's given to us, it's what cannot be taken away from us. And so looking at that, everything in education through that lens, the local level should have the largest jurisdiction. State, county, they can give us some suggestions, they can give us some guidelines, but they should not be dictating to us what we do. I mean, to look at Pennsylvania and to say that the state can tell Philadelphia and Cocalico, we all have to do the same thing, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because our communities are so vastly different and unique. So one size all fits approach does not work. We hear that a lot in education, to my fellow educators out there. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I don't think federal should have any jurisdiction when it comes to our local school districts. We might say, what about funding? They give about 6.9%. The largest financial contributor is your tax dollars and our local funds, and they should be used accordingly for what the parents and the residents of the district want for their children.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments. I think, from my perspective, I think in some ways we've created a lot of these problems ourselves. There's been a gradual erosion of rights over a long period of time, and I think it's because we've sacrificed, we've allowed security to become more important than liberty. So I just think that's just a fact of life, and I would say we're all to blame for that to a degree. So I believe it's been a gradual erosion. I see it getting worse, and I don't see it getting better. I believe that it should be a local decisions. The power should be with us. The power should come from you, through us, to the administration. That's the way it should work.
I was surprised by my reaction when I stood in front of the school board and members of my family when I put my hand on the Bible and swore an oath to the Constitution. I hope all of you at some point in time get to do that. It was remarkably emotional for me, and I keep a picture of that on my desk at work. Because you swear to uphold the laws of the Constitution and of America and the Commonwealth. As for where does power come from? Power comes from us, but we're all interrelated. We have to all work together as a community, as a state, as a country, or we all fail. So when you ask me where does the power come from, it starts here at the level, but we're working together as a group to further this nation, and we better be. That's one of the things I think is missing right now, is we don't seem to be working together as a group to move forward.
Okay. The next category is what we refer to as the big three. It has to do with the school board transparency, school board authority, and school board accountability. So for the first question, do you believe the school board currently exhibits enough transparency? And if not, how would you know when sufficient transparency had been achieved?
I'm on the inside of this, so I'm not sure how we perceive transparency. We have a lot of people showing up at our meetings for the first 2 years. We didn't have anybody show up. And I'm happy to see all of you at our meetings now. There are things that have to happen at any school board in executive session with any type of company, community, government agency. There are things that have to happen with the people on that board, or we don't move forward. Our meetings, our work sessions, our general meetings are, I feel, transparent. We have to learn how to discuss issues at those more, because in the past we've sat in a small room and talked among ourselves, and there's been nobody there. We had a really poor meeting, our last meeting on the stage of Cocalico, because a lot of what happened there was we simply could not hear each other. I'm used to sitting directly across and looking at Lynn in every meeting, and at that meeting he was 60 feet away from me, and I felt lost. And I felt lost because I really couldn't hear what was happening. So
I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure you have time to answer. So you do believe the school board currently exhibits enough transparency?
I'm going to say that I really can't. I feel it does, but I sit on the inside. Okay. So I sort of feel like you're asking me a question that I sort of feel is unfair, because I don't have a helicopter view of this.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with Brett. It's difficult to sit on the inside and not have the perspective that you folks have. I'll give you an example. My wife started to come to a few board meetings, which I encouraged that there were a lot better ways for her to spend her time. But she decided to come to just watch, and she said, you know, Lynn, from my perspective, sitting in the back watching things, it looks like you guys just rubber stamp everything. And that was good for me to hear that. I think the one thing that I personally would like to see us improve on is the ability to have good civil debate in front of the public. I think that would be appropriate, and I think it would help everyone to see, for us to be more transparent.
Okay, well, as a follow-up then, according to the Sunshine Act, all deliberations are supposed to be public in front of the constituency. If you don't believe that there is enough transparency, you believe that would help, what would you be willing to do? What would you be willing to do to commit to leading to improve that? That you said you'd like to see more of.
I think we've already had some good discussions about trying to have that more open. So I've certainly been an advocate of that with on the board. And I really think that we can get that done. I feel confident that we can have more of those discussions. I would say, just like Brett said, there's plenty of things that have to be done in executive session. They just simply have to be, personnel issues, whatever they are. That's just a fact. It's just a fact of it. But these important discussions about these important issues that are coming up, I think, deserve to be had. And with the public's view in mind, I would encourage you to come. I'm appreciative of the fact that you do come. You help hold us accountable. So personally, I will advocate for having more discussions, more debate in public work sessions.
Can I say one? I'd like to say one thing. When we have executive session, we do not vote. We have no vote in that room. That's a time for us to have discussions about topics that are important.
Do you think what's in debate there, or I should say what's in question with regard to transparency, isn't whether there's a vote, it's whether there is deliberations taking place in executive sessions?
It's discussion, not deliberation. We get a chance to talk about it.
You can come to resolution without a vote.
But we don't do that. We on Cocalico don't do that.
How about the?
You mind if I ask a follow-up question, Doug? How would you distinguish between discussions and deliberations?
Deliberations are a motion that we all move on and we come to agreement as a whole. I think in discussion, we have a time to talk among ourselves and tell people what we think about a subject, but I don't think, I know of one time in executive session where I think we actually had a discussion that we all had to decide what we were going to do on it, but it was a private personnel matter. So, and that's what the deliberation, discussion is, executive session is discussion, not deliberation. We're not making resolution, we're not moving things forward, we're talking about process, we're talking about subjects that might be important to each of us.
Can I ask a question, since we do have two sitting board members here? Regarding the enforcement and the decision to move ahead and comply with the unconstitutional mandate that was brought down from Allison Bean, when was the decision made that whether or not you would comply with that or not comply? Because to my
I'm
knowledge...
going to ask to hold that for a public question.
Okay.
We'll give the public a chance to ask that question.
Okay, great. Okay, so then my answer then to the question, which was about transparency, I'll answer it from the other side, because obviously you guys just answered it from your side. So as a parent in the community, my answer would be no. And how I would gauge whether the correct amount of transparency has been achieved would be personally for me when I can go to sleep at night and not worry about what my children are what they're experiencing during the school day, or what they might experience in the coming weeks or months, depending on what the powers that be above decide to mandate, okay? So when parents can ask questions and get answers on the spot, or they can be told, I don't know, but I will get back to you with an answer when I do know, or when emails are returned and answers are given with a date.
What would you be willing to commit to lead to improving it, just for time's sake?
I would be willing to commit to advocating for additional special sessions where there could be open two-way dialogue between parents and the board, and questions could be asked and not met with a blank stare. They would actually be answered on the spot, or be told a time when the questions would be answered or the answer would be given to them. And not just them individually, but all of the other parents that are there listening and would like to know the answer to the question.
Okay.
So again, from my perspective, in the conversations that I've had outside of the school board meetings, there's absolutely not enough transparency. We heard a little bit down at the end of the table about, with Lynn and Brett, about the sunshine and executive session. Executive session is supposed to be used sparingly according to the Sunshine Act. So all of these executive sessions that are happening need to be announced just as well as any other meeting, and they need to be for a specific reason. It can't be just a blanket statement. It can't just be, oh, personnel reasons. It has to be stated to the public what those are actually, what it actually is. We are firing a teacher because of, not because of something, that's the conversation. So any deliberation, any talk of a vote, any talk about policy changes, that needs to be in the public view. That's according to the Sunshine Act. So our last meeting where we had actual debate on the stage is how every single meeting is supposed to be. The public is supposed to see where the stance of each school director is, so that you know who you're voting for and how they're representing you. So that's where the debate is supposed to be, is on that stage. Now, half of us in this, so I think that I've been to a lot of the school board meetings, and we keep gaining more and more traction with a lot of our citizens coming out, but that last meeting was probably the best meeting I was at because there was the most debate. We weren't all happy about the vote that they had on stage, but it was the best debate. So we all walked out going, that is how a school board meeting should be, because we know where everybody stands, and that's how it's supposed to be. So moving forward, understanding that, understanding the actual Sunshine Act, and knowing that our school board has currently been doing illegal action by having all these executive sessions without announcing, without telling you exactly what it is about, that is a problem. So how do we fix that moving forward? More transparency by speaking in debate in the public, having public opinion, having dialogue, and not doing it behind closed doors for everything. That's how we move forward with that.
Okay. The next category has to do with school board authority. Do you believe the school board currently respects parents as having more authority when it comes to what is best to put into the minds and bodies of their children?
Again, this is my outside view of the school board. I don't know what these executive sessions are, and I know they look at it and they're trying to do, I respect all the individuals on the school board and the decisions that they're trying to make. In my personal opinion, a lot of those decisions are being made off of fear. And we don't know what that fear is because they're not debating it on stage. We don't know where the threats are coming, whether it's the teachers union, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether they're fearful from the solicitor and who's going to be suing and who's going to be suing the school board, what's going to happen there. We don't know any of this because we don't have that open dialogue I just talked about before. So from my viewpoint, and I'm standing here and I'm looking at it, I don't think, as we're parents sitting in that stage, I do not feel that we feel that the school board is on our side because we don't see that transparency, and we don't see that they're actually putting the authority into the hands of the parents, because we see that cookie cutter vote that Lynn was talking about before.
How would you know when sufficient boundaries by the school board have been achieved? Boundaries on their authority over your children?
When we start listening to the comments, when the agenda comes out, and the school board listens to those comments before they put a vote in place. For example, the last meeting, I had 10 minutes to look at the addenda that is out, that the school wouldn't let us look at. In that addenda, it was a whole bunch of policies in that addenda that would give more power to the superintendent and take it away from the school board. The school board is our representation. So the more power we take away from the school board, away from anyone that wants to get voted in up here, the more power we give to the superintendent, to the government, and everybody else in every.
And what would you be willing to do to lead to improving the respect for authority over your children?
Well, put the power back in the parents. So what do I do? Open a dialogue.
What would you specifically commit to doing if you were on the school board to achieve that? That's it.
One of the first things I would do is put an addenda item up for vote, that we would have some kind of dialogue with the families and people of the district, so that we could actually hear as a school board what the people who we're representing really want. That would probably be the first step.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and let me just say, and I apologize, I should have clarified this. If you can get straight to the point on the first question, that tells me whether or not to follow with the following questions, because there are 2 follow-up questions to that. But here, just so you know, here's what it is. Do you believe the school board currently respects parents as having more authority when it comes to what is best to put in the minds and bodies of their children? And if they say no, my question is then how would you know when sufficient boundaries have been achieved? And then once they answer that, then what are you willing to commit to leading to improve it? But if they don't say no, then I don't need to do the follow-up questions, you know what I mean? So I just want to get straight to the point on whether you believe that or not, so I know whether to have the follow-up.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
So, the follow-up question that I would be.
And how would you know when sufficient boundaries have been recognized by the school
I
board?
think that would be gauged by the school board meetings and the parents in attendance and the feedback that they are given. If you have a room full of a couple hundred angry parents who are voicing their comments and their concerns and having questions, I think you can know safely that it has not been achieved.
Okay, what would you be willing to do to improve it? Commit to leading?
I would be willing to give a commitment of time, as Dan suggested and I suggested earlier, to have specific time set aside for open forum, questions and answers, to be scheduled at different times, because I realize parents have different schedules and they can't all make it on a Monday night at 7 or whenever the board meeting is. So we would have to vary days and times, I would imagine, so that all people can have their voices heard. And I would also commit to reading emails, responding to emails, and finding solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna take a little bit of different tack, pull me in if I'm going off stream here. I would just say I would like to separate the school board from the admin, if I can. So I believe that the majority of the folks on the school board do respect parents as having the final say. I don't think we've done necessarily a good job in adjudicating that through the administration. So if I could separate those two, if you're
Do you mind if I ask for an example? Because I do think that folks in here would like to understand what do you mean by the separation. Give us an example of where you may not have done a good job and therefore the administration has executed poorly.
Yeah, so if a parent would have brought an example of a teacher, let's say, going outside their boundaries in regards to what we would say is appropriate, did we do a good enough job holding the administration accountable to correcting that, disciplining it?
Okay, thank you. I'll just stop you there and ask. I think though that for this venue, the context is about the policy decisions that are being made. And as a candidate, your role strictly as a school board member.
Yeah.
So I would ask that we probably restrict the administration out of the picture.
Sure,
Because
that's
it
fair.
really does have to do with the
Yeah.
policies being passed.
No, that's fair, that's fair. And I would just jump to this, and that is that I believe that if we improve public debate among the school board in public work sessions and in public meetings, we can go a long way towards doing that.
Okay. How would you know if sufficient boundaries by the school board have been achieved in respecting parents' authority?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And is there anything you'd be willing to do to commit to improvement?
I want to see more public debate.
Okay.
Could you ask the question again?
Yes. Do you believe the school board currently respects parents as having more authority when it comes to what is best to be put into the minds and bodies of their children?
As a parent, I think that's my responsibility.
Do you believe the school board respects?
I go back and say I think it's the parent's responsibility, and if the parent has a problem, then they need to bring it to the teacher, the administration, the school board. In the end, I want that personal control over what my child is learning. I don't want I don't want a government making a decision for what I think might be a problem or not. The school board oversees the administration of the college, of the school, of classrooms, and I really struggle with why do I want to give up the parent right to the school board? I've had curriculum issues with children, with one of my children.
So I guess I'm not clear on your answer there. Do you believe the school board currently respects parents as having more authority, as a board itself? Do they respect the fact that, do you see it exhibited that the school board respecting the parents have authority?
I don't, the school board shouldn't be.
Not what they should, but do they? That is the question. Do you believe the school board currently respects parents as having more authority when it comes to what is best to put in the minds and bodies of their children? Is there a sufficient level of
I understand what you're saying, but once again, I struggle with the idea of it's the parent's responsibility to see what your child is learning at the school, and the school board, if I go to a school board member and they don't agree with me and they think that the child, that the child is being instructed correctly, that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear the parent's point of view, I want to hear my point of view of it.
Okay, the last section in the big three, as we call it, is do you believe there is sufficient accountability for the school board as a group and or individuals for their actions?
Yes, we're having an election, that's the ultimate accountability. And people do emails, people do write us, I have been spoken to in parking lots. I'm here tonight, this is all about what the accountability is.
Right.
Yeah, I would probably agree with Brent.
Okay.
From what I can gather, it seems like the accountability chain has been turned upside down. The way that I saw the board conduct themselves in the last meeting, if I didn't know better, I would think that the board is accountable to Ella Musser, or that the board is accountable to Allison Bean, the Secretary of Department of Health, or that the board is accountable to Governor Wolf. However, the Ella Musser and all of the administration is accountable to the board. The board sits at the top, and the board is elected by the parents. So I don't
How would you
know
when sufficient accountability had that achieved?
when the parents' voices are heard and their concerns are addressed.
Okay, and what are you willing to commit to lead to improving it?
Everything that I've said so far, giving my time, coming up with solutions, hearing what the parents want, and if that goes against what the administration wants, so be it.
Okay, thank you.
I concur with Brent, Lynn, and Rachel all at the same time. The reason we're having this meeting right here is to hold candidates and current board members accountable. That's what an election is for. That's why we elect representation to ourselves through election process. So that is an accountability piece. If I look at the other side of it, like Rachel had, I don't think that our current board, all of the members of our school board, believe that they're held accountable to the Constitution. I believe they feel that the dictates of the Department of Education and the Department of Health are what we have to follow. It's flipped upside down. So if we're looking at accountability, we have an accountability to our handbook that I talked about before, that bestseller, the Bible, to the Constitution, to the people, and that I believe has been a gray area in a lot of our, not just our school board, but all of our school boards. So I will say shame on me. I haven't been to a school board meeting in a long time until this last year. In public comment, I bet a lot of you haven't either. And Lynn kind of hit on that too. So do I think we're accountable as a school board through elections? Absolutely. But do I think we're holding ourselves accountable to what a solicitor or a superintendent says? Way too much. We are in charge. We hire and fire our superintendent as a school board, not the other way around. So when I see what I saw at the last meeting, I feel like we are following the dictates of the rules of the powers that shouldn't be, instead of we the people in the debate that we talked about before. Well, okay, so if not, how would I when sufficient accountability have been achieved?
And what would you want to do to improve it?
Again, open dialogue, true transparency through true debate is the best way to do that, to see where we're at. If we have a debate up on stage as as school directors with our superintendent, I think that is the best way to ensure that we are hitting those goals that we're trying to do to improve it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the last section in our debate tonight has to do with the topic of what we call interposition. Interposition is when you place yourself between two parties, one that you believe is to do harm to the other. So the first question in this category is, do you believe it is the duty of the school board to affirm and enforce all laws and orders from higher offices, or do you believe the school board has a duty to be selective in what it affirms and enforces as a gatekeeper on behalf of both the higher offices and the constituencies that elect it?
Okay. First off, it is the school board's job, you know, the high-paid job that it is a voluntary elected position. But that elected position is to be representation of the people that are living in that school district and of the parents of the children in our school. So do I think that we should be enforcing all the laws and orders from higher offices? No, that would be going against the Constitution. If those laws and orders are unconstitutional, then we should not be abiding by those same laws. We should, at that point, be growing a backbone and standing up for the people and the wishes of the people to move forward in a constitutional manner. So if it's a law that you have to have your kid go to school, your child go to school from a certain amount of days during the year, yes, that's something as a school board we should do. You can't commit crime in school. That's a law that we should all be following. But when somebody comes out and makes a fake mandate that it decides what education we want to, what curriculum we want to shove down our kids' throats that we all know is unconstitutional, when it comes to the jab and what we put in our kids' bodies, those are mandates and fake laws. No, that is absolutely something that a school board should not be following.
Are there any other criteria you would use other than the Constitution to discern when to affirm and enforce and when to resist and prevent?
I talked about, evil. I think common sense is the biggest one. You see as a parent what's coming down the path. You heard Lynn say it before. We heard the teachers union president say that if you want to get rid of masks, you're going to get a jab. Okay? So I think we have to inject a little bit of common sense. We have to be a little bit righteous about it too. That guidebook we're talking about. If our freedoms are being taken from us, that is the first step to say no. We need to say no at that point. So say no to the tyrannical dictates that are coming down the path, that are taking power away from the parents and you as people, that are putting it in the hands of the leaders that we are there now.
Yeah, sure. And just so everyone knows, I put my coat on not because I'm planning on running out of here. I'm just cold. I got really cold.
Really sweaty.
I'm always cold, so I'm always cold. Sorry.
All right. Do you believe it is the duty of the school board to affirm and enforce all laws and orders from higher offices, or do you believe the school board has a duty to be selective in what it affirms and enforces, acting as a gatekeeper on behalf of both the higher offices and the constituency that elected the board?
Yes, board members should be guardians against the mandates coming down and things of that nature. It's fine if the state or the federal government want to make recommendations, and we're free to disregard those if they don't fit our community or we feel that they're harmful. So, yes, absolutely we should be selective. The Constitution is the bedrock of what we allow. Anything that violates those would be no. We're not going to stand for that, okay? And we're going to be there to stand, like as you said, as an interposition between those types of things. And they're running rampant nowadays, okay? So.
And what criteria would you use to discern when to affirm and enforce and when to resist and prevent?
You have to listen to the parents. You have to listen to the community. What does the community want? It's been made very clear that the community does not want their children masked. However, some do, and they should be able to do that. But we should not be forcing all to comply to one thing. Never in the name of health and safety or greater good or things like that make people feel righteous and virtuous for going along with them, okay? We have to do what's right, and that's give parents the choice. Parents know their children best, and we have to stand for the people that elect us.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously it's a great question, and we swear an oath to uphold the law, and I believe in the rule of law for sure. I just want to give you some examples though of how shades of gray get interpolated into this. So we decided that we decided that we're going to enforce the mandate for masks, but we waited probably longer than most other school districts did to do that, and then we added another week onto it. And then we had kids walking around chin strapping it with the masks down here, and it still happens a lot in schools, I'm sure. And then it's not happening on board school buses to a large degree. So that's what I say when we as a school, I'm concerned that we as a school board are unwilling to take back that piece of authority and say, look, that is our decision. We've already done it. We've already done it. We just done it in degrees, and we ended up in a bad spot. But we've done it in degrees. We've already defied the mandate in degrees, but we haven't ended up in a good spot. So my personal opinion is that we need to take back that responsibility. The criteria that I would use to judge that, I would go back to what Dan said and to what Rachel said. It's parental input and it's common sense. So I would say that this kind of input that we get at our board meetings is certainly valuable, and it's very reflective to me of what the community wants. So I'd be open to hearing from anyone in the community who has other opinions. We just don't seem to hear them that much.
Lynn's right, we've done it by degrees. But when we are sworn into the school board, we're sworn in to uphold the laws. I think one of the things that's so frustrating with all of us in the school board is it's not moving as rapidly as we want. We had a good plan at the beginning of the school year. We thought we had the idea that we were moving in the right direction, and the governor threw us a curveball. And we were advised to follow the mandate because it had not been litigated, and until it's litigated, it's considered something we have to follow. Whether I like it or not, and I don't like it, I think the part of swearing on the Bible and the Constitution makes me think that I need to follow that and be patient until that law is litigated, and nothing happens quickly with anything in these courts these days. And I agree with Lynn and Dan. It's parents, that's where it has to come from.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a slightly different follow-up with you. From your answer, I'm interpreting that that for the most part, you do believe it is the board's responsibility to affirm and enforce all laws. Can you think of any circumstances that there would be an exception?
No, I can't think of a place that I would have an exception. If I had an exception to it, I'd resign and fight it from a different point. But if I'm going to stand in the school board and swear on the Constitution, which I believe is the basis for this country, then I have to follow those laws. And if I disagree with the law, I resign and fight it from a different place.
The next question under interposition is, under what circumstances would higher offices be justified in holding an entire board or an individual school board member liable for a lack of affirmation and enforcement?
Could you just repeat it for me again?
Yeah, under what circumstances would the higher offices be justified in holding an entire board and or individual school board members liable for lack of affirmation and enforcement? For instance, the state or federal level holding.
I think if we don't educate our children and we don't perform to the absolute top level we can possibly do.
Okay, not to single you out, but I just want to make sure, based on your previous answer, is it safe to say that what you're saying is that if you don't always affirm and enforce all laws, then they would be justified in holding you accountable?
You asked me for a specific case where was there a law, was there something I could think of? And the second question is about where would we be removed from? And I think we've seen school districts in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and that the government has taken over and running them because they haven't educated their children.
Can you repeat it?
Honestly, I think I understand the question. I'm just not sure I have a good answer. I mean, I know that one of the threats obviously was sovereign immunity being removed from us. Would that be an example of what you're talking about?
Well, I guess I'm saying that it kind of depended on your answer to your first one. Like if you believe, for instance, again, not to single you out, right, but if Mr. Buckwalter is saying that by and large, we should always affirm and enforce the laws coming down from higher offices, then it stands to reason that the second question that I just asked, under what circumstances would they be justified in holding you accountable, would be if you didn't affirm and enforce. However, if in the previous question, you said that there is a degree of latitude, there is a degree of discernment and discretion at your level that you should act and interpose, then this question would highly apply to the three of you. Under what circumstances would the higher offices be justified in holding you accountable for a lack of affirmation and enforcement? Does that make sense? Is that better?
Yeah, I think it does. I guess I would probably have to agree with Brett, and that is if we don't do a good job educating our kids, then they should remove us.
I would have to disagree with that because the board does not educate the children, and that is a subjective qualifier. What is a good education to you may not be a good education to me. However, I think that federal and state governments would be justified in removing board as a whole or individually if there are violations of federal or constitutional laws. So if we as a board are doing unconstitutional things on the state level, then the state should step in to protect the children from their state constitutional rights being violated, as with federal. If we are violating federal laws as a board, the federal government should step in and rectify that.
I hear what all the other candidates here are saying, and I heard Lynn say about the sovereignty of the school board. Obviously, the school board is an elected a position of voluntary pay, okay? So the school board is, if they are following constitutional rule, and they're following the guidebook that we talked about, it's not their job to educate our students, like Rachel said, but it is their job to uphold the Constitution, both enemies, domestic and foreign, right? So that's what you swear in. So if we are following the Constitution and we're representing the people as the Constitution states, where we the people are in control, then I think we have a happy medium. But if we step out as a school board and we don't follow the Constitution rule, and we have mandates that are not by law, and then we have fear of suit, when the school board doesn't follow actual constitutional law or common sense, then at that point they become personal liable. I think that individual school board members liable for lack of affirmation and enforcement. At that point, if you're not following the Constitution and you are going against what common sense states, and then you're allowing a government force to dictate upon you what that is, then at that point you've lost you've lost where your position should be. And I don't think the federal government should ever be able to come in and remove a school board. I think that's what the voting process is, and that's what we talked about from an accountability standpoint. So I think the problem comes in if we don't follow the constitutionality of what we're up here to do, then a parent can come back and hold us liable, and that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be the government and the higher powers coming after us. It should be the parents that can come after us, and unfortunately, I think that's the next path if we don't figure this thing out here really shortly.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to say to the audience, we're at our last two questions for the night, and I will say, having done this for 3 years, I can assure you that these last two questions would have been considered rather inflammatory or absurd as little as 2 years ago. So with that in mind, I want you to hear the candidates' answers and understand that all of us are in many ways in uncharted waters and in a very unique situation given the strains on our society today. What, if any, policies or practices by the board or policies or practices being pushed by the board today would you be willing to risk being held liable by a higher office for resisting and or preventing?
Anything that goes against the wishes of a parent for their child.
But what specifically is active today? And I'm going to press all of you. What specifically is happening today and potentially in the future would you be willing to personally risk liability and being held accountable for?
We know it's coming. A jab mandate is coming within the next few weeks. We all know it. Common sense tells us this. That is a hill that I die on. It is absolutely not happening to my children or any children in my community if it's not desired by the parent. Again, it's the parent's decision. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer, okay? But I am a pro-parent choice for their children, okay? So that's a hill I die on. When it comes to masks, you've seen me at the school board meetings. I personally don't believe the masks do a doggone thing other than hurt our children. So that's something else that I think that I would personally be happy to step before a government agency and say, no. That is something I will, again, I'm a fighter. I don't fear them. They should be fearing me. So, anything, again, the question was, what if any policies, practices by the board or policies, practices being pushed by the board today, would you be willing to risk being held liable by higher offices? Anything that takes our constitutional right as parents for our children, I will stand up against. That's it. It's that simple. It's a simple answer. No. Anything that takes the power away from the parent.
Currently, I would be willing to take the consequences of non-compliance to the mask mandate, and the reason that I think that is so important is because that is what would give us strong footing for the mandate that is coming next, which would be the vaccine. So, not standing strong when they first come to take away a freedom is not going to make it any easier to say no to the next one. Again, if people want to vaccinate their children, great. If people want their children to wear a mask, great. They should be able to do those things. They should be free to do them, and there should not be any backlash or any policy saying that they cannot do those things. But there should never be a mandate that is enforced by the board saying that everyone must do A, B, or C, okay? I would also be willing to take any consequences for non-compliance to Pennsylvania Department of Education's harmful curriculum that they're pushing out regarding gender ideology, racism, all of the stuff on their website, as some of you may have seen in my recent posts about white fragility and oppressors and white privilege and all of those things. They don't belong in our classroom. Parents can teach that to their children if they so choose, but we should not be indoctrinating our children with radical liberal ideologies. And I would be willing to die on that hill as well, 100%.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think, the two major issues that are in front of us right now are obviously masks and vax mandates. I think you all know where I stood on the mask mandate. The vax mandate is something I would also die on that hill. And believe me, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I personally am vaccinated. I'm happy I got vaccinated. But I would absolutely fight for someone's ability to say no. Okay? This is not something we can mandate, and I feel very, very strongly about that. I'm hopeful that we have a majority of the board members that would feel strongly about that too. I can only speak for myself, obviously.
I don't think there's a vaccine mandate coming. I might find being naive about it, but the way the mask law mandate has come down and the time it has taken to drag it through the courts, and we don't know how it's going to turn out, I don't see any mandate in the offering. I would like to say that I work in a business right now, that I work in the entertainment business, and I have not seen a contract come through in the last 3 months that doesn't have a mandatory vaccine for any of my staff or anybody who comes to see a show. It's something that we're just seeing on my side of it. I don't think that that's coming to our schools. I think that this will stay at a parent level, and I hope it will. Because it should be your decision on whether you vaccinate your children or not just for COVID, for other vaccines too.
Are there any other policies or practices that you would be willing to risk being held liable for resisting or preventing?
None that I can think of.
Okay. Last question for tonight, and I will defer to audience and candidates whether or not we think we have time for some audience questions, so give that some thought. Last question for tonight. Are you willing to resist federal or state mandates you believe are harmful, even if it results in loss of funding for the school district? And if so, what ideas would you have for that funding to be replaced or compensated for through spending cuts?
Yes, I would be willing to resist them, but as I said before, if I felt that strongly about it, then I would resign from the board and fight them from the outside. The funding, wow. As Lynn will tell you, as Lynn knows, the school funding is a really living and breathing animal. And And it's hard to say in abstract, you know, are we replacing $2 million, or are we replacing $20 or $30 million? So you're asking me an unknown that I can't say I can really answer, because, you know, our school board we have really, as a school board, very small control over the amount of money that we have in our budget. There's so many different policies, PSERs, salaries that we don't have control over.
Yeah, I agree with Brett, it's challenging. So we have about a $60 million annual budget, and 30 plus million of that is made up of you folks paying real estate taxes. 25 plus is state, comes from the state level, and we get another miscellaneous, say, let's just say $5 million from some other resources. There has been a lot of talk about the ESSERS grant, which was basically, if you're familiar in business with the CARES Act, that's what it was for public schools. And that amounted to a few $1 million for us, I believe 2 to 3. So I would certainly absolutely be willing to sacrifice that, and I believe we could find a way to make that up. I don't have a good idea on how we make up the 25 million. That's another challenge. So.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be willing to resist federal and state mandates that I believe are harmful, even if it resulted in loss of funding. If it is what the majority of parents want. If the parents are behind, and you explain to the parents in an open forum, this is what's at stake, these are the possible consequences, we might lose this amount of money, what are we going to do then? And we can receive feedback, so that, because as it stands, there may be a whole slew of other of things in the background that parents don't know about with this mask mandate. What's at stake? We don't know, because we haven't been told. Are we going to lose our insurance? Are teachers on the inside reporting us to the state? What's going on? We don't know.
And do you have any ideas then on how that funding could be replaced or compensated for through spending cuts?
The first thing that I would suggest would be that we would get an outside financial consulting firms who look at the finances and to pour through and say, where can we cut some costs here, if any? I would look at the contractors and projects that are ongoing, and are they charging us a fair price? Do we need to get more bids from the community? Are there contractors that have been in here forever, and maybe we need to get some fresh blood in there, things of that nature. Maybe shake things up a little bit and just maybe not do what's always been done. Get some new ideas.
If any mandate is harmful, what is it worth? So absolutely. I don't care if it's $100 million. If it's harmful to our children and our future, then I don't care about the money. Money is a blessing, but it's still a root of evil. Okay? So the other thing that we're talking about here is we're looking at our budget. I thought it was more than 60 million. I thought it was more in the 70s. But the thing we keep throwing around is we get 30 million from our community and we get 25 from the state. We forget that 25 from the state is still ours. We forget the federal government is still our money. It's all our money. We just pay it in a different way, and it comes back to us in different ways, right? So for them to cut us off because we're not following their unlawful mandates or the harmful mandates, they're basically taking our tax dollars and saying you can't have them back. And so where is that constitutionally? You're now taking a state agency that wants to cut our funding and saying they're not going to give the same education to our students in this school district as another. Do you see a federal agency doing that right now if the people are up against it? I don't. So the more they keep putting fear into us about taking funding, they can't. It's another possible, we're going to take your funding. They can't. Show me a Philadelphia school district that has any good testing, and have they ever taken their funding away? No, they keep dumping more money into it to try to fix something that's broken. So they're not going to take our funding away if we follow harmful mandates, or if we don't follow harmful mandates. So what would to answer Rick's next question? What are my ideas?
Replace it or cut spending?
Yeah, compensating and cut spending. Again, I'm a numbers guy. I like going through spreadsheets. I've been through our spreadsheets, and I'm like, how do we spend $15,000 in copy paper? I mean, that's simple. Seriously. We can look at this stuff with common sense and look at the budget, and we can figure this stuff out as a population, as a community. We can look at what our numbers are and what they are, and we can figure this out as a community. But I'm telling you, I don't think they're gonna cut our funding from these harmful mandates. Again, it's still more fear.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you candidates for your time and for your questions tonight. I am going to open it up. Are you guys got the energy to stay for a few questions if you have from the audience? Okay, great. If you would like to ask a question of us, you can come on form line here in the middle. We'll get you the microphone. Your question can be directed to any one candidate, but I'm going to give the other candidates a chance to respond to your question too. So if you have a question directed at one candidate, we'll get 1 minute responses from each party. Anybody want to ask the first question? Okay.
I do.
Sorry, I only have so many
That's
microphones.
fine. On the topic of the executive meetings that y'all were having during the school board, I know several parents had written letters to Dr. Musser and also school board members requesting information underneath the Sunshine Act as to why and how we came to some of these decisions. Because obviously a lot of us have been to these meetings since, April, May? We've been coming to these meetings and it just seems like we're not getting any answers.
Is that directed to anyone specific?
Anybody,
Okay.
I just want, in
So
general,
what is
answers.
the question again?
What really happens during these meetings? Is there no notes taking, no records taking? Because we get emails back from LMS going, well, I can't abide by you under the Sunshine Act because we don't have any information to give you.
Okay.
Really?
Okay. All right, 1 minute for each candidate.
Executive sessions, we don't keep notes, we don't keep records, we have discussion. We don't vote on anything, we just have discussion there. And that's if you're talking about a general thing, I'd have to go back and see what the lawyer has said. I know the Sunshine Law, I know what the Sunshine Rules are. I can't answer a specific question for you tonight.
Sorry, I need to back up onto this question.
Okay.
It just seems like a lot of decisions have been made behind the scenes that we know nothing about. And I think that's where a lot of our frustration is coming from.
The deliberations.
Yeah. It's like, how did we go from being mask optional to all of a sudden it's enforced? You have to wear masks. Our children are being put into concentration camps. We have teachers and administration blocking the doorways for children to get in and out of the rooms because they don't want to wear masks. I mean, this was just blown way out of proportion.
Okay, I want to just stick to the question because of time.
Yeah.
The school board did not do that. Governor Wolf did that. He gave us a timeline. He gave us
It was the DOH, not
the
Governor Wolf.
DOH. It's all coming from the same
Oh, my
place.
phone's set up there.
It's all coming from the same place.
Okay.
You agreed to it, right?
Yeah, that's not the question. The question was about the visibility to the.
We in reality don't have that many executive sessions. We sometimes have, before a school board meeting, might have a short session to make sure that we know what we're going to talk about that night. But that's more of an informative to make sure we know what we're discussing.
Okay.
But we didn't have a lot of COVID discussions back in March of last year that were executive session.
What did you want to? You're not required to give a response, but you're welcome to.
I really don't have much to add to Brett's.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious as well about when the decision, because there had to have been a decision made one way or the other. Are we going to comply with the mandate or the order from Secretary Beam, and then, or are we not? And then there was also additional guidance that is not even included in the order from Pennsylvania Department of Education, and that was also followed. So there had to have been a discussion that happened, and there had to have been a decision made. I realize that a vote was not taken or a motion was not made, but a decision was made. And that is something that should have been deliberated and debated publicly, because it, as you can see, it affects everyone
Well,
in
maybe I'll
school.
disagree. I guess I'm only going to add is that we did have that debate and we voted on it the last meeting. It was voted down.
But you you put a motion on the table to pause
Correct.
discipline, and the discipline was a consequence of following the mandate. So when was the mandate, when was the decision made for the mandate? Was that in that executive session that was a couple days after, 3 days after the Allison Beam order was issued?
That's it, just, we can't have a dialogue between the candidates, we just want to get your response. It is. Okay. We'll let the audience decide.
So brief answer on that one. Again, what Rachel was getting at, somewhere along the lines, through our communications, through myself personally, we ask school board members who made the decision in the administration. We ask the principals, when my daughter is disciplined, we ask the disciplinarian, the principal or assistant principal, who made that decision. It's the administration. We go to the administration, and the administration said it was decided by the school board. We go to the school board, and the school board said, we don't even know. And then we saw at the last meeting, we saw a school director say, I don't even think there is discipline happening in the school. Okay, so again, to Rachel's point real quick, Lynn stood up and put something on the agenda that is created by our superintendent and by administration that should have been on there, what everybody was there for in the first place, okay? But we're still looking for transparency and trying to figure that out. So I understand where these gentlemen are coming from, but from my chair, we are not open enough, and we don't hear what's going on. You see the passion right here?
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. Again, you can direct it to any individual board. You can direct it to any particular candidate. All the other candidates have an opportunity to respond.
Okay, so I see I'm on camera, so hopefully my hair is okay for you guys. Okay, you guys opened up the door of a question about the annual budget. So actually I have two questions, if I may ask that, please. So thank you for that.
Can you combine
them? You mentioned, pardon?
Can you combine them?
They're two separate topics, but they're good questions.
All right, let's do the first one first.
Okay, so first question, you mentioned like $60 million to $70 million per budget per year. I guess there's 5,000 students in the whole district. I just took a guess. Why does it cost $12,000 to $15,000 to educate one student when a private school can do it for half the amount?
Okay. You're not required to respond, but you're welcome to. Was that directed at anybody?
Anybody can answer it. I would, hopefully all four can.
Not all students are equal, and also remember that special education grows in Cocalico, and that's very expensive. You also understand that we pay for charter school students, and they're the largest single private school. $14,000 in some cases we pay for charter school students.
I doubt that, but go ahead.
It's true. It's true.
Private school is $6,000, $7,000. It is.
But you're right. Private school is $6,000-$7,000. There's also charter schools that cost $14,000.
Sure.
Our special education students can cost $25,000-$30,000. Not everything is equal among all of our students.
Yeah, I agree. But go ahead, please.
Let's give them a chance to respond.
I'm not going to pretend to know why, private schools get by with less. Maybe it's partly because they have to, because they don't receive the same funding, so they make do with what they have. Possibly it could be allocation of funds in different programs and things of that nature. I would certainly like to look. I would certainly like to know myself, because it's a good question, and maybe they're more resourceful with their resources than public education. I don't know. I would be interested to find out.
I don't know why a charter school costs $14,000 to the school district as opposed to I don't want to say normal student, but just a regular student in the district. I understand what you're saying with a private school being $6,000 a year or more, or a little bit less. I would agree with Rachel on that standpoint. Whenever you get the government involved, I was in the military, right? So you could go buy a Humvee for $100,000 and the government pays $500 for it. Why? I don't know, because it's the government, they're spending somebody else's money. So what we're doing in the school district, again, I like to look at the numbers and try to figure that out. Why are we spending $15,000 when I can go to WB Mason and spend half that? I don't know. So I think it's a lot of overreach and overspending for things that you see Lynn asking questions about budgetary things for work progress and jobs that are to be done there. So again, I don't think there's enough transparency, I don't think there's enough questions being asked, and I don't think we're actually diving in enough of where our money is being spent.
I'm going to ask just to let the other folks rotate in. Real quick, if you could just rotate the back.
Alright, so kind of going off topic, but I sent an email to all the city members of the board a while back, and the response I received from Reverend Eshelman was that he wanted to create unity, like bridge the gap, bridge the divide. Specifically, how would you bridge the divide and create unity?
Okay. And that was directed to all four?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I said it earlier, I think the best way to bridge that divide is to actually use what God gave you two of and one of. Through humility and grace is the first part, but through leadership as well. So when you hear an issue, you take a moment, you think, you pray, and you act on it. And that's how I feel I would be. When I want to, I feel called to be the warrior that I was made to be. Part of being that warrior is to unite people, because divided we fall. The only way to do that is to listen to everybody that we have that I'd be representing if I am blessed to be voted in the school board. So the first thing we need to do is to listen to the people. The second thing we need to do is to have good conversations with everybody else that's on the board, to have that dialogue and that debate in a public setting, and that transparency needs to happen. I don't think we have any unity if we don't create more transparency and give more of a voice to the people. That unity will be out the window if we don't unite and be more transparent and get more voices from the people.
Good.
I think the area currently where there needs to be a repair of the breach, so to speak, would be between the parents of the community and the board and the administration, and I would want to see that gap closed. So as a parent in the community, I would be informing my decisions from that viewpoint, as well as sitting on the board, and obviously that would mean getting more insight into things that us parents are not seeing right now, and hopefully sharing that information both ways, right? I think the more questions that are answered and the more everyone fully understands the issues, it'll just naturally happen. I think that we will be able to come to agreement on things whenever we know all of the pieces of the puzzle. Then we can figure out where to put them.
And I think just venues like this, listening, frankly, are great. So I applaud each my three members up here who took the time out of their busy schedules to do this. It's a sacrifice for sure, but I think that's the way you start, is by listening.
I agree. This is how we start, and think better of us. We are trying to do the best we possibly can. I can speak for the 9. I don't speak for all 9, but I speak for myself in this case. I'm trying to be the best person I can in that room with the rest of the school board, and I have no agenda coming into it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a question for Brett. So you said that parents should have the choice to vaccinate. What's the difference between letting parents choose if they want to vaccinate their child or not, and having their children wear a mask?
Okay. And again, just to reiterate, question is directed to Brett, but any other candidates have a chance to respond also.
Vaccination is at this point in time not a mandate. It's not a law. It's a choice of the parent, a choice of the individual to make. We were given the option at the beginning of the school year to be mask optional, and I believe it was the 7th of July when the order came down that we had to mask our students. So that's the difference, is that we have that's the difference in that.
So if it did become a mandate, would you vote yes?
Would I vote mandate on a vaccine? No, I wouldn't. But I'm going to say that I think you should be vaccinated. That's my personal opinion. I know there's a lot of people who don't think that COVID is serious. I have seen it recently with my own eyes, and I am concerned.
I don't really have anything to add.
What was the question again? Oh, okay, I remember. Yeah, to me there is no difference, because if we let one freedom slide, then it's just gonna go, all downhill from there. So there's no difference. Students shouldn't be forced to mask, they shouldn't be forced to vaccinate. We have to hold our ground, because that's how that communism doesn't just come to a country, okay, overnight. It doesn't just come on the big issues. It starts out with the censorship. It starts out with fraudulent elections. It starts out with nobody questioning things. It starts out with people calling each other conspiracists when they have valid questions and concerns. It comes out when people virtue signal that one choice is better, somehow morally better than another, when it's actually, there's no moral ground, it's just personal choice. So to me, they're no different.
I don't think there's a difference either. Again, I talked about harmful mandates coming down the pipeline. I do believe that you should have the freedom of choice to wear a mask or not wear a mask. It should not be forced upon you. There's a reason that evil came after our children, and we're allowing 110,000 people to be packed into a football stadium. It's about money. Okay, so if we're talking about, this is all political. So common sense tells me that a mask mandate is harmful to our children because it's all political and it's all money driven. So they're coming after us from our kids to see how much they can get past us, as Rachel stated. So were I on the board, I would have absolutely opted for parental choice. If you want to wear a mask, go right ahead. If you want to get the shot, to Brett's point too, that's your decision, is still freedom. But do not mandate it. Do not mandate it.
Okay, I'm going to hold the last three folks here. We'll let you ask your questions for the night, and then we'll finish there. So no new questions after these three.
First of all, thank you guys for being up there, and gal. I'm sure you guys have a good intent to be up here, and you have a genuine intent to care for our kids. So thank you in advance for that. I'm going to ask a couple questions about governance and structure and authority, because you guys talked about this in the discussion tonight, and also transparency. I want to talk a little bit about the governance of the superintendent or the administration that you guys do govern, because you guys do have the ultimate authority governing the school board and the school district of Cocalico. So the question was asked at last school board meeting is about segregation, about the segregation room. Who made the decision to make that room, and why was that not acted upon by the school district? And secondly, I sat in the back, sat up front, watching people at the end talked about their grievances. Parents were crying, literally in tears about their children. And I'm going to be very specific, and this is not meant to be demeaning. I just want to know what's the authority of the school board, and what are they going to do about governing the superintendent and the authorities. We had administration sitting over there not paying attention on their computers, disrespecting the people of Cocalico. So what are you as a school board going to do to rein in the administration of this school district? Thank you.
Okay, so let me recap there. I want to make sure I capture the essence of your question, sir. So the first question, just to be clear, is you wanted to know who made the decision on the segregation of the children, and then what's going to be done to rein in administration that you think is
Yeah,
okay.
I just, yes.
Just want to make sure.
Yes,
That.
thank you.
The first question, I have no idea, because I'm asking the same question. I've stated it all evening. Who decided that it was going to be disciplinary? Who's going to come up with a disciplinary plan? Because it keeps going round robin. It's like circle back. I was told not to say that, but that's when it keeps coming. Okay? So I have asked that question. My wife has asked that question. People have asked that question across our district. Nobody knows who came up with a disciplinary plan, but somehow we're following it and we're segregating our kids. So we're talking about possibilities of being sued as a school board, and I talked about probabilities, and the probabilities are that segregation and discrimination against our students who weren't wearing masks. That's a probable lawsuit that can be held, in my personal opinion, against the school board personally, because they're breaking constitutional law. Okay? So, second question, what was the second question I just got?
About reining in our control administration.
How do we rein that in? Obviously with transparency. We have to speak in debate form, transparently, on the stage with our administrators and the school board, and debate out these rules and edicts that they're trying to pass on stage.
Again, yeah, I can't answer the question because I would like to know the answer to that one myself. And also, I would just simply ask people to get off of their devices and pay attention to the parents. You know, I would, at the meetings, if I saw that, you know, I'd probably just nudge, hey, pay attention, they're talking to us. You know, I don't know. As far as his second question, you know,
Okay.
it's just simple respect. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have a lot lot to say about that. I would just say I would probably looking forward more to what these potential new school board members would have to say about that situation as far as holding, because I think, you know, we probably could have done a better job at that, and I'm looking for some fresh new ideas. So.
Well, I will say though, as city board members, I think you do have the ability to answer the first question of who made that decision and what was the process.
I don't know who made that decision.
Okay?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay?
I don't know who made the decision. I think they were trying their best to keep everybody in school and doing what they thought was best. Whether you agree with it or not, I think that they thought they were doing best, and I would disagree with the administration. I think the principals. I would disagree with. I know we're not supposed to debate, but as far as I know, this is not a disciplinary situation, and if it is, I'd like to know.
Yeah, it is.
How have you been disciplined?
My child sat in his room by himself with no assistance from the teachers for 3 weeks
But
because he didn't wear a mask.
Yes.
He was separated.
Okay.
That's segregation.
That's
That is
segregation,
discipline.
but I asked the question about discipline.
That is discipline.
That is discipline.
That's inclusion.
When is it taken away from somebody else? If you take something away from somebody else, you're disciplining them.
You took away his right to learn. They took away his right to get the same education as every other child in that building because he chose to not wear a mask, which is his right.
Okay.
So that's discipline.
Okay.
Yes.
And then what was the other part of that question?
About reigning in the administration, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're saying it as the school board was not responsible for that, and therefore the administration was. I think that goes to the gentleman's second question, which was how would you rein in that administration that's acting on its with autonomy like that?
Right.
Is that fair?
I think we need to do a better job.
Anything specific?
I think we need to ask questions about what if what was really happening there. And as to the administrators on their computers and phones, realize that you never know what might be going on in the background there. If there's a sporting event, if there's something else that might be happening there, I see some of them sometimes, pick up their phone and work while we're in meetings and they're physically working.
That's wrong. Okay, let's call for responses.
All right, is it on?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, a little closer.
Okay, my question is to the Lynn and Brett, since you're currently on the board. It's silly not to consider the vax mandate coming down. It's happening. It's going to. Hopefully not in 2 weeks, because I'm not prepared for that, but it's going to be here. I want to know, will you send out surveys like you did for the masks? And will that change how you vote for that mandate? Or is that just going to be, all right, we're going to get their comments, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to vote the way I'm going to vote. Because let me tell you, I am extremely active in this is the way I don't talk.
So can I summarize real quick? Okay, so I believe what she's asking is, will you get the public opinion and will you base your decision on the public opinion? Is that okay?
I don't think the board has ever sent out a public survey just from the board. It usually comes from administration.
Yeah, but
Come at us
you
from
are, it's board administration.
But we
are.
are, and if you're asking if we would encourage the administration to do that, yes, I would.
Would it change?
And when would that influence your vote? Would you base it on public opinion?
I've already said I don't think I would vote for a mandate. No, I said I think I did say that.
Yeah, he did
I
say
did,
earlier.
that's
He
what I
did
said.
say earlier that he would not vote for a mandate, even though he feels personally that vaccination should take place.
And I already said I would not vote. I would vote no for a mandate.
Okay.
I wouldn't vote for a mandate. I would still want to know what the parents want, and I would want to know what the percentages are, just to still inform the decision, even though I would not be
Because it's a
voting
money
yes.
decision, because I can tell you, I'm looking at charter schools,
Mhm.
and it's not because I'm unhappy with Cocalico, it's because I will not vaccinate my child.
Right, and so that needs to be something that is quickly resolved, so the parents do have the time before the mandate would be an issue.
We can't be naive and say the vaccine mandate isn't coming, because it is.
I feel that the vaccine mandate is inevitably coming as well.
Okay.
Yes.
We made our entire military have to get the vaccine. Why wouldn't we make our children?
Amen. Amen.
To your point, you're going to go to charter school. To Brett's point, that's $14,000 in a student. And what is the average cost of a normal student right now?
Depends on the student.
Depends on the student.
He's a normal.
So let's just say, okay, $8,000. So we pull a student out who doesn't want to follow the mandate, and we just cost the school district $6,000 more. I don't have a problem with you doing that. Sometimes we have to answer your question. I absolutely will vote against anything that takes parental rights away from the parent. Anything that takes away the freedoms of the child. Because this is the lesser magistrate. This is the closest thing we have to true representation. If we don't do this now, we lose it all for good. That is what we're fighting for. That is what Rachel and I are running for.
Okay, final question tonight, not too much pressure.
Okay. I just want to know at the next board meeting that any of you are elected into and attend, would you put it on the agenda that it can be parents' choice whether or not they have masks or not, following along with what, for example, what Alenco did, where the parents can send in a note saying that I don't want my child to wear a mask. I believe that's still following the mandate, because in the mandate, it does not address whether or not it has to have a doctor's note, a 504 plan, or an IEP. It's just a recommendation from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Would any of you commit to doing that?
Yes.
So if I understand right, you're asking if they will forward a proposal that would give.
Put it an agenda item on the next board meeting. You know, Lynn did that at the last one. Yeah.
Okay. Do you understand the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I would put a motion to add that agenda item, and I would expect someone to second that.
I would second that. I would put it forward. There are many agenda items that I would want. The first one would be something along those lines, back to parental choice, but it would also be something that would be on the agenda that would be put up to the board to open up transparency and debate, to eliminate these executive sessions that don't need to happen. Okay, so again, I've read through the Sunshine Act laws as well. We have been violating those not we, but as a school district, we have been violating those. And that is something personally held liable against the school board as well. So to answer your question, if I were on the board in the next month, that is absolutely something I would add to that agenda. I'm not even sure who comes up with the agenda, but I believe it's the administration. So obviously we had the pink elephant in the room the last meeting, and it wasn't on the agenda, and Mr. Sensenig stepped up and added something to that effect on that agenda, which we were all very happy about. But again, these are the things that people want.
Yeah, I would just say, and believe me, I'm still getting educated on some of this stuff, so I'm still relatively new. There's a lot of things about Robert's Rules of Orders that I don't understand yet. That was brought up, the agenda item that I added was brought up under if you can't add anything less than 24 hours ahead of the meeting, you can't add anything unless you bring it up as an emergency
Right. And
act.
it could be the same thing.
And that's how I brought that up. So it would have to be, if it would not be agreed to by the administration and by the rest of the board, it would have to be done through that.
Yeah, and I mean, they were gonna have another meeting that never happened, you know, and that felt really like disingenuous to all the parents, because there was gonna be further discussion, further communication.
Don't disagree.
And it never happened.
Let's give Mr. Buckwalter a chance to respond.
Could you repeat what the question is?
I wanna know if at the next board meeting, if it's not already on the agenda, could somebody add it to the agenda so that you can vote to do like Alenco did, where they're just requiring a parent's note to exempt children from the mask mandate? Because in the order, it does not say that you need a doctor's note, it does not say you need a 504, it does not say you need an IEP. It's just recommended from the Pennsylvania Department of Education.
Yeah, procedurally, that's Paul. Would you advance that roll call?
No, I wouldn't, because I don't know enough about what you're talking about, because I think there is. So I'd have to go back and do it. I'm not gonna make it, I don't know, no, I wouldn't.
Okay. Well, that concludes our debate tonight. I want to thank the candidates for coming out. Please give them a hand.